This is the AWS Morning Brief Security Edition. AWS is fond of saying security is job zero. That means it's nobody in particular's job, which means it falls to the rest of us. Just the news you need to know, none of the fluff.
Do you wish your developers had less permanent access to AWS? Has the complexity of Amazon's reference architecture for temporary elevated access caused you to sob uncontrollably? With SIEM, you can protect your cloud infrastructure with customizable, just-in-time access workflows that can be set up in minutes. By automating the access request lifecycle, SIEM helps you reduce the scope of default access while keeping your developers moving quickly. Say goodbye to your cloud access woes with SIEM. Go to SIEMops.com/Corey to learn more. That's SYMOPS.com/Corey. Hello and welcome to Last Week in AWS Podcast Security Edition. Apparently RSA is next week instead of this week because I can't read a calendar. Oops a doozy. If you're in town, let me know. I also hosted a partner panel at AWS Container Day at KubeCon this past week. It was a fun conversation. Check out the link in the show notes. Now let's see what happened in the world of security. I found a post on using OICD to secure your CI/CD pipelines, and it mirrors what I did with GitHub Actions a year or so ago. I enjoy not having long-lived keys lurking around to one day pop up and wreck my month. Terry Radishell has a piece on creating an AWS Backup Account. You definitely want to pay attention to this. Slack is conducting an absolute masterclass in how to screw up messaging to your target audience. I love Let's Encrypt, don't get me wrong, but if CA acceptance is in any way a serious enterprise concern, then a company in their position would be complete fools to use it if you have to email all of your customers. Speaking of screwing up messaging, Azure had another cross-tenant access vulnerability, this time in their on-premises data gateway offering, whatever the hell that might be. Oops. Tailscale SSH is a new and arguably better way to SSH. Once you've enabled Tailscale SSH on your server and user devices, Tailscale takes care of the rest, so you don't need to manage, rotate, or distribute new SSH keys every time someone on your team leaves. Pretty cool, right? Tailscale gives each device in your network a node key to connect to your VPN, then uses that same key for SSH authorization and encryption. So basically, you're SSHing the same way you're already managing your network. So what's the benefit? Well, built-in key rotation, the ability to manage permissions as code, connectivity between any two devices, and reduced latency. You can even ask users to re-authenticate SSH connections for that extra bit of security to keep the compliance folks happy. Try Tailscale now. It's free forever for personal use. And the videos are up from the Bay Area AWS Security Community Day, including my own Security Hub Hurts My Self-Esteem. Speaking of, what has AWS gotten up to? They have a security profile of Matt Luttrell, Principal Solutions Architect for AWS Identity. And it's fascinating to see the background of people like this in AWS's security org. Matt's got a software development background, which is helpful in the extreme. I come from the opposite end of the world, where I was in the operations space and viewed development with suspicion, distrust, and if I'm being honest with you, more than a little bit of envy. And the tool of the week is I Am Live. It shims your local system to see what AWS calls you make and then crafts a least privileged policy to work accordingly with specific resources rather than making you guess like the IAM Access Analyzer does. Yes, please. And that's what happened last week in AWS security. I'm sure RSA will have a bunch of noise and possibly one or two interesting things coming out of it. Stay tuned.
Thank you for listening to the AWS Morning Brief Security Edition. For the latest in AWS security that actually matters, please follow AWS Morning Brief on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever the hell it is you find the dulcet tones of my voice, and be sure to sign up for the Last Week in AWS newsletter at lastweekinaws.com.